It started on a Saturday morning, one of those picture-perfect days where the air smelled like fresh-cut grass, the sun filtered through the trees, and the neighborhood seemed almost too peaceful. I had my plans lined up. Nothing fancy, just a trip to the hardware store to grab the last supplies I needed to finally finish my workshop. Months of sweat, late nights, and saving had gone into building that space, and I was excited to put the final touches on it. Coffee in hand, I stepped out my front door with a sense of satisfaction and purpose, but the moment I turned toward my driveway, all of that optimism drained away. There it was, parked squarely in front of my garage like a gleaming blockade, a bright white SUV. And not just any SUV. I knew that car. Every single person in the neighborhood knew that car. It belonged to Karen, the self-appointed tyrant of our HOA, the woman who had made it her life's mission to control every detail of our lives down to the color of our mailboxes. At first, I just stood there in disbelief, my coffee cooling in my hand. Blocking someone's garage wasn't just inconsiderate, it was deliberate. This wasn't some accident where she couldn't find a parking spot. No, this was Karen sending a message. For months, she had been at war with me over the smallest things, complaining about the height of my grass, threatening fines over the wrong shade of paint on my shutters, even writing me letters about the American flag I proudly flew above my porch. She twisted the HOA rulebook into a weapon and wielded it like a sword. And now she had parked her SUV in front of my garage to make sure I couldn't leave my own house. My jaw tightened. Enough was enough. Still, I decided to try the polite route first. I walked up to her front door and knocked. For a moment, there was silence, and then the door creaked open just a few inches. Karen stood there, arms crossed, eyes glinting with smug satisfaction. She didn't even try to pretend it was an accident. "Oh, is my car in your way?" she asked sweetly, her voice dripping with false innocence. She leaned lazily against the doorframe as if she had all the time in the world. "Yes, Karen," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You're blocking me in. I need to get out of my driveway." Her smirk widened. "Well, you see, the HOA rules are very clear about unsightly construction projects, and your garage has been an eyesore for months now. Consider this a temporary deterrent." I blinked, stunned at her audacity. "A deterrent? Karen, you're blocking me from using my own property." "Then maybe next time," she purred, lowering her voice like she was delivering some dramatic line from a soap opera. "You'll remember who runs this neighborhood." With that, she slammed the door in my face. I stood there for a moment, the echo of the door slamming still ringing in my ears. My blood boiled, but something inside me clicked. This wasn't just petty anymore. This was a declaration of war. I walked back to my driveway and stared at her SUV, gleaming in the morning sunlight like a white monument to her arrogance. I wasn't just annoyed, I was done. I pulled out my phone, snapped a picture of her car blocking my garage, and scrolled through my contacts. If Karen wanted to play games, fine. But she had no idea what kind of game I could play. The very first thing I did was call the sheriff's office. They arrived within minutes, took one look, and confirmed what I already knew. Blocking someone's driveway is flat out illegal. The deputy walked up to Karen's door and knocked. When she appeared, she didn't even try to hide her smugness. She waved her HOA rulebook in his face like it was the Constitution itself. "This is private HOA business," she snapped, "not police business." The deputy rolled. His eyes, wrote her a ticket, and told her to move the car. But Karen didn't care. She crossed her arms and flat out refused. Right then, I realized the regular channels weren't going to work. Karen thrived on bullying and believed she was untouchable. What she didn't know was that I wasn't just some pushover homeowner. I had friends in high places and in heavy machinery. One phone call later, the wheels were already in motion. My buddy Mark, who worked logistics for the National Guard, owed me a favor. When I told him my idea, he actually laughed. "So let me get this straight," Mark said. "You don't want it towed. You don't want it fined. You want her car airlifted." "You heard me," I replied. "Not just moved, relocated, and I know the perfect spot." The plan was wild, maybe even insane, but it was poetic justice. Karen spent years lording her HOA title over everyone, bragging about her so-called connections to the mayor, a distant cousin, apparently. Well, if she thought she was untouchable, I was about to prove her wrong. The next morning, just before sunrise, the convoy rolled in. A flatbed truck arrived first, followed by a utility vehicle carrying a massive sling rig. The soldiers worked fast, sliding straps beneath her shiny white SUV. And then, slowly but surely, the impossible happened. Her precious car began to rise off the ground. The neighborhood woke to the sound of the rotor blades. People stumbled outside in their pajamas, rubbing their eyes, phones recording. Karen herself came storming out the front door, shrieking, "What are you doing to my car?" I stood there, arms crossed, calm as stone. "Just giving it a new parking spot," I said. Her face turned crimson as the SUV swung above the rooftops, dangling beneath the helicopter like a captured prize. Within minutes, it was gone from sight. By noon, the photos were everywhere. Karen's car, parked crookedly right on the mayor's pristine front lawn, reporters and cameras swarming the scene. The caption that spread like wildfire summed it up perfectly. HOA power trip meets military precisio. And the fallout was instant and brutal. That afternoon, Karen came storming down the street, hair a mess, phone pressed to her ear as she screamed into it. She wasn't yelling at us this time. She was demanding the mayor fix this outrage. But the mayor wasn't amused. His front lawn had been turned into a media circus. Photos of Karen's SUV sitting crooked in his grass were all over social media, and reporters were roasting him for being tied to her. He didn't just refuse to help. He was furious at her for dragging his name into her petty HOA war. By evening, the walls around her little empire started to crumble. The HOA board scrambled to call an emergency meeting. The community center was packed, neighbors flooding in, many holding their phones high with the viral pictures of Karen's car dangling under the helicopter. For once, the whispers weren't in her favor. People who had stayed silent out of fear were now speaking loudly about her arrogance, her bullying, her abuse of power. The ticket from the deputy was one thing, but embarrassing the mayor and humiliating the entire neighborhood on the internet? That was the final straw, and the final nail came from the mayor himself. He called for her immediate removal, and the board had no choice but to obey. In a single night, Karen's reign ended. She was voted out on the spot, stripped of her title, fined for blocking my driveway, and slapped with the full cost of the airlift operation. As for me, life finally went quiet. My garage was free, my project back on track, and for the first time in years, neighbors who had once avoided confrontation came to shake my hand. They thanked me for standing up, for tipping the scales. The neighborhood, which had felt like Karen's personal dictatorship, now felt like a community again. A week later, I sat on my porch at sunset with a cold drink in hand. Repair crews were finishing too, their last jobs, the street looking better than it had in ages. Karen was gone, moved out in humiliation, her reputation shredded, and her infamous SUV, still impounded, unclaimed, a monument to her downfall. I raised my glass and chuckled to myself. "Next time, Karen," I whispered, "try parking legally." The sun dipped low, painting the sky gold as laughter and chatter drifted down the street. The cheers weren't for me, not really. They were for the freedom we'd all won. Because in the end, it wasn't about a blocked garage. It was about standing up to a bully. And sometimes, the best way to end their rule is to drop the fight right on their front lawn.